Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Here we're going to be speaking about al-munada. Al-munada is the eighth type of mansubat that we're going to be speaking about. And al-munada is very simple. It's ism yaqa' ba'da harf min huruf nida. The munada is an ism that comes after one of the harf, one of the particles from the particles of al-nida. Al-nida is how you call somebody. And obviously, the most famous type of harf nida, the most famous type of particle of calling is ya. Ya Allah, Ya Abdul Rahman, Ya Muhammad, and the list goes on. So al-munada is a noun that's going to come right after ya or any one of its sisters, which we're going to cover. Because maybe some people don't know this, but there's a lot of different types of huruf al-nida. There's a lot of different types of ways to say o or ya, the equivalent of it, yani. So we're going to cover the different types of huruf nida, the different types of particles of calling, ya being one of them. And then we're going to explain how the noun that's going to come after this ya or any one of its quote unquote sisters is also going to do the same action, which is that it's going to make the noun come after the munada mansub. So the ya is called harf nida, the munada is the noun that comes after it. So what are the different types of huruf nida? The huruf nida can be broken down to four different categories. Can be broken down to four different categories. There's what linida and qarib. There are two which are used to call something that is close to you, which is a and a. These two can sometimes be used as a harf nida. Obviously, the hamza can sometimes be used to ask a question, and a also, but they can also be used to call somebody that's close. A Muhammad, a or a Muhammad, a Muhammad, وهكذا. This is to call something that's close. Now, to call something that is far, linidad ba'id, you have these three different here. A Muhammad, Ayya Muhammad, Hayya Muhammad. Okay. Then finally, you have those that are used for lil qarib wal ba'id. You have the ya, which is used for both something that's close to you or something that's far to you. So you use the ya regardless of the distance of the person. Okay, but these ones, they're distance restricted, if you will. Then finally, we have one that's used for a nudba. And a nudba is to express pain. A nudba is to express pain, and they use wa. So say, for example, wa dhahra. Wa dhahra means oh my back, or oh the back, pretty much. Oh my back. Okay. So I'm not going to go into details on how this functions because there's a lot of details there. But this is another type of harfun nida. Now, obviously, the one that's usually used is ya, but these ones here are sometimes also used, usually in places like shi'r, places like poetry, you will find these other ones being used. But in common speech and in the Quran, wallah alam, you're only most likely going to find ya. Now that we covered the different types of harf nida, the different types of huruf nida, let's talk about the munada, which is the noun that's going to come after any one of these, and it's going to be mansub. We're going to see that there's some details there. So aqsam and munada, the different types of munada can be broken down as follows. You have one which is going to be mabni ala ma yurfa'u bi fi mahalli nasb. One type of munada is going to actually be mabni on what the word would originally have been marfu with. So if we're talking about, for example, a singular noun like Muhammad, then this noun Muhammad, if it's coming as a munada, is going to be mabni on one dhamma, but it's going to be fi mahalli nasb. It's going to be in the grammatical position of an-nasb, the i'rab al-mahalli of an-nasb. But for example, if we're talking about muslimuna, muslimun is a general like a sound masculine plural. So the sign of it being marfu is a waw, right? So if we use muslimuna as a munada, it would be mabni ala al-waw, which is its original sign of rafa', but it's fi mahalli nasb in the grammatical position of nasb. So it's very similar to the la nafi'atun jins, in the sense that the noun that comes after la nafi'atun jins, with the conditions that we mentioned, is going to be mabni on what it will originally have been mansub with, but it's fi mahalli nasb, it's in the grammatical position of a nasb. Same thing here, but it's mabni ala ma yurfa'u bi. It's mabni on what it would have originally been marfu with. Now, this is going to happen if the munada is al-alamun mufrad, a singular proper noun. A singular proper name. Okay. Ya Muhammad, Ya Aisha too. So a proper name. So Muhammad, things that we name people with, names of people pretty much. It can also be names of places. So Mecca, but you don't call Mecca, obviously. So we're only talking about human beings. So Ya Muhammad, Ya Aisha too, وهكذا. So Muhammad and Aisha too are both in these two scenarios مبني على الضم في محل نصب. They're both mabni on a dhamma and they're in the grammatical position of a nasb. So they're mansub, but with the i'rab al محلي. The second type of noun which is also going to function like this is a nakiratul maqsuda. And I'm going to explain what a nakiratul maqsuda is in the next slide. So now let's go to the second category, which is the noun that is mansub, or the munada that is actually going to be mansub, and it's not going to be mabni on anything, but rather it's going to be mansub with the arab al-lafzi. So these are nouns that are actually going to be mansub, but they're going to be mansub, they're going to have a fatha, and it's going to be the regular type of arab. So these are three types of nouns, and mudaf. So anytime you see a noun that's mudaf, is going to be mansub في fatha. Ya Abdullah, Ya Abdul Rahman, Ya Abdul Salam, the list goes on. So you don't say Ya Abdullah, you say Ya Abda with a fatha. Why? Because Abda is mudaf, and it's the munada because it's coming after Ya, so it's mansub al-i'rab al-lafzi. The second type of noun which is also going to be mansub is shabih al-mudaf, so the noun that is similar to mudaf, we covered that before. Ya Rahiman bil-ibad, or the person who's merciful bil-ibad with the slaves. And then the third type of noun, which is also going to be mansub, is a nakira to ghayru maqsuda, the nakira that's not maqsuda. So the opposite of this one here. So this one is going to have one dhamma, is going to be fi mahali nasb, or it's going to be marfa ma yurfa'u bi, or mabni ala ma yurfa'u bi. It's going to have one, it's going to be fi mahali nasb, but this one here is going to be the opposite, actually going to be mansub. So now I'm going to explain this thing here. What is a nakira to maqsuda, and what is a nakira to ghayru maqsuda? So a word that's nakira can be of two types. We're talking about the munada. When we're talking about the munada, the nakira can be of two types. So a nakira is a noun that is indefinite, right? A noun that is not referring to something specific, okay? So it pretty much doesn't have an L in it in this context. So a noun that is nakira, when it comes to munada, it can sometimes be maqsuda and it can sometimes be غير مقصودة. مقصودة means هي اسم نكرة يعقب بعد حرف نداء وتم قصد تعيين فيه. النكرة المقصودة is a noun that is nakira, but it's very clear who the speaker is talking to. النكرة المقصودة is a noun that is nakira, and it doesn't have an L in it, but the person who's using it is very clear who he's speaking to. So it's a noun that is nakira that comes after a harf al-nida, but تم قصد تعيين فيه. It is clear who the person is, who's the person that's being addressed. So if the teacher says قال المدرس يا طالب, if a teacher says oh student, and he's looking at you, it's very clear that he's speaking to you. تم قصد تعيين فيه. The قصد تعيين, the تعيين, the specification is very clear and it's complete in a sense. So in this case, the nakira here is maqsuda. It's maqsuda because it's clear who he's speaking to, so it's pointed. Maqsuda can be translated as pointed. So in this case, if it's a nakira maqsuda, it's going to be like an alam al-mufrad. It's going to be mabni on ma yurfa'u bi, so here's a dhamma, but it's going to be fi mahali nasb. So it's going to function the same exact way as Muhammad or Aisha. Ya rajulu, ya talibu. So in both these cases, it's mabni ala dhamm fi mahali nasb. Now, an-nakira ghayru al-maqsuda is the opposite of this. So ismun nakiratun yaqaw ba'da harf nida. It's a ism that's nakira that's coming after a harf from the huruf nida, so ya or what the case may be, but lam yatimma qasdu ta'ayini fi. It's not clear who the actual individual being addressed is. The example that the grammarians always bring is if a blind man wants to say ya rajulan. قال الأعمى, a man, there's a blind man that's walking and he wants to cross a word. He wants to cross a road. And he knows that there are men around him. So he says, Ya rajulan, oh a man, help me walk across the street. So here, rajulan is a nakira, but it's a غير مقصودة. لم يتم قصد تعيين فيه. It's not clear who he's actually speaking to, or he's not speaking to one individual, but he's just speaking and calling out a man in general. So in this scenario, it will be called nakiratun غير مقصودة, a nakira that is not specified. Like a blind man saying, Ya rajulan, in a crowd of men. So this is the difference between nakiratu maqsuda and nakiratu غير مقصودة, or nakira غير مقصودة and nakira maqsuda. So aqsam al-munada can be broken down to these two categories. Those that are mansub, which are these three here, and then those that are not mansub, they're not mansub of the arab al-lafzi, they're not apparently, they're not, physically quote unquote mansub in the sense you can't see the fatha or whatever the alama is, but they are fi mahali nasb, they are in the grammatical position of a nasb. So this is the munada. The munada is always going to be mansub, but it's either going to be mansub with an apparent sign, right? Or it's going to be fi mahali nasb. with the conditions that we just talked about.